Okay, listen, there is a good chance that you walked through your local grocery store or butcher shop, scanned for your favorite cut of beef, and headed home to enjoy a nice meal. But I'm here to tell you that you've been skipping over one of the tastiest and easiest beef dishes out there. And strangely, it's not even meat. This is beef bone marrow. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode here at Timeout Kitchen, where today I'll be showing you how to make oven roasted bone marrow. If you've never had this before, think beef butter. I know, it sounds weird, but that's literally what this is. The marrow is fatty and rich, and once roasted, it becomes soft and spreadable, so make sure you've got some good bread nearby. Now, for those that are familiar with this dish, you've probably seen this on a restaurant's menu and probably never even bothered to order it. And honestly, given how much they usually charge for these things, I don't blame you. But fear not, because at home, these bones are actually inexpensive, easily found at your local butcher, and as I mentioned, incredibly simple to make. Plus, they look pretty impressive. So with all that said, let's cover all of our ingredients. To start, you'll want to, unsurprisingly, grab yourself some beef bones. Now, there are a few options for bones here, but the most common and most impressive looking, in my opinion, are definitely going to be these femur bones cut lengthwise. If you can't find them cut lengthwise like this, just swing by your local butcher and ask them to cut you some. It's not going to be a big deal, and they usually should have some on hand. Also, one thing to know, guys, is that these might be frozen, so make sure that you let them thaw and get them to room temperature before cooking. Now, if we take a closer look, the middle here is actually the bone marrow that we want to eat, and while it looks like a lot, this is actually not as much as you think, because it's going to render down significantly during the cooking process. So you definitely want some bones that are as full of marrow as possible. Now, if we flip this over, you can see the bone has some leftover meat and connective tissue, which when cooked will darken, so you can obviously scrape this off if you want to make things look a little bit prettier. Next, to cut through all that fatty richness of our bone marrow, I'm going to whip together my version of a gremolata. Now, this should provide a nice bright acidic note, which in my opinion is needed. So to make our gremolata, grab yourself some fresh flat leaf parsley, roll yourself out one lemon, which we will use the zest and juice from, and then grab about 1 or 2 tiny cloves of garlic. Finally, unsheath your sword, or in this case, the baguette from your local bakery, and you're pretty much good to go. And don't worry, if you can't get a baguette, just try to find any good bread with a crusty exterior. And with that, our very short list of ingredients is now covered, so it's time to get to the prep. The first thing we're going to do is grab a pot of warm water and then toss in a healthy pinch of kosher salt to make a saline bath for our bones. And the reason we're doing this is because, as you can see, the marrow and the bones have some blood and other impurities in there, and we want to get as much of those out as possible, because we really want a better and cleaner flavor. So gently drop in your bones and let this sit for at least 10 to 15 minutes. While that's doing its thing, let's move this to the side and prep the oil-based gremolata. And yes, I did say oil-based, but we'll get to that in a second. So grab a handful of your parsley, roll it up tight, and then give this a rough chop. You could also add in some basil here as well, but either way, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. Next up are your small cloves of garlic, so peel off those papery skins and toss these into your garlic press and just give this a quick squeeze. You can of course also chop these, but we don't want any large chunks of garlic, so be sure to chop these as fine as possible so they look something a little bit like this, or maybe a little bit smaller. Right, so with our garlic press, it's time to move on to that all-important acidic note, so grab your lemon and hit it on your microplane. You're looking to zest around half the lemon and squeeze in about 1 teaspoon or so of lemon juice, but you can always adjust depending on what you like. Then, to make our gremolata as inauthentic as possible and make the Italians hate us even more, add in about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Then just give this all a quick mix to thoroughly combine everything, and this bastardized version of gremolata is 90% done. So just move your gremolata to the side and grab your bread. Now, since I'm only cooking 3 bones here, I'll only need about 1/3 of this baguette, but I'll cut half of it because it's always good to have extras, and let's be honest, who doesn't like extra toasted bread? So with our bread sliced, it's time to bastardize our gremolata just a little bit further. So put a small saucepan on medium-low heat and toss in 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Once this gets up to temp, drop in your gremolata and let it gently fry. We're looking to cut the harshness of that raw garlic here and really help infuse the oil with all those good flavors. So this should only really be on the heat for about 60 seconds or so, and you'll want to mix frequently. If your garlic browns, you've gone too far. But once that's done, just quickly transfer this back into your bowl and let it cool while we move on to our beef bones. Now it's been about 20 minutes and our salted water has removed some of those impurities, as you can clearly see, so we want to fish out these bones and dry them off with some paper towel. Just be a bit careful when you pat these dry because the bone marrow is actually quite soft and we don't want to break it up. Once the bones are, well, bone dry, go ahead and transfer these to a foiled sheet tray. One thing to keep in mind here is to make sure that these are cooked with the marrow side up, or you'll end up with a melty, beefy mess on your tray. But with your bones properly oriented, just simply season these with kosher salt and some freshly ground black pepper. The marrow should be evenly coated just like this, and they're basically now ready to hang out in our 450-degree oven for about 20 minutes. Oh, and speaking of this hot oven, after about 10 minutes of cooking is actually a really good time to get your bread ready to be toasted as well. So on another tray, organize all that bread you sliced earlier and then drizzle in some olive oil over each piece. Now, do this individually or you will end up with some oily mess that you do not want. Also, here is actually a great opportunity to add some extra flavor and season your bread with any additional spices that you like. Dry oregano, garlic powder, and smoked paprika are all great options. In my case, I just sprinkled over a little bit of kosher salt. With your bread properly dressed, you can toss these into that 450-degree oven until they are lightly golden brown, about 5 to 6 minutes or so. Okay, so it's been 20 minutes exactly, and it's time to pull out our marrow. You can see the deep, rich color within the marrow, and also a good bit of that fat has rendered out onto our tray. You could dig into this right now if you wanted, but these things are really, really hot, and we want to let these cool down slightly so we can handle them a little easier and give us time to add the final touches. Which translates loosely to we want to plate this up and make it look pretty. So grab yourself a plate and then use a pair of tongs to snatch up one of those very hot marrow bones. You can see how smooth and delicate the marrow has become after roasting, and all that amazing beef flavor is locked into this soft, silky bite. This thing is a total flavor bomb. But to enhance that flavor even further and actually cut through some of that richness, we're going to drizzle over our saucy gremolata. And with that beautifying final step complete, you're now the proud owner of some amazingly delicious roasted bone marrow. This marrow is beautifully roasted, buttery, and smells amazing, and the contrast from our gremolata really makes this dish pop, both for your eyes and for your taste buds. As you can see, this is truly a simple dish to make, and it's guaranteed to impress as an appetizer for guests or as a tasty snack. Honestly, if nothing else, the smell alone is worth the minimal effort that these require. And that smell's actually kind of really getting to me, so all that's really left now is to grab our toasted bread and give this the old taste test. So grab a spoon and scoop out a little bit of that beefy, buttery marrow. You can really see how tender and soft this is now that the fat has rendered out, and the addition of the gremolata and olive oil make for a very spreadable final product. So with toasted bread in hand, spread on this beefy, buttery marrow and take a long-awaited bite. And to the surprise of exactly 0 people out there, this is frickin' delicious. The texture contrast between the crisp bread and buttery marrow is familiar and welcome, but that deep, rich, beefy flavor is what really makes this stuff so addictive. And while you don't need the gremolata, it's providing a very welcome, bright, acidic note that really helps balance this thing out. And yeah, there you have it, a super simple, delicious, and inexpensive oven-roasted bone marrow. I hope showing just how simple this dish is inspires you to give it a shot at home and maybe impress a few folks along the way. And with that, I'm out of here. So thank you so much for watching until the end of this video, and as always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.